I still remember the smell. Dust and exhaust fumes mixed with the sour stench of my father's sweat. The roadside stretched endlessly under a cruel sun, cars passing by without a second glance. I stood there, 12 years old, my thin arms clutching a plastic bag with everything I owned. My father's hand gripped my shoulder so hard it left bruises that would turn purple by morning. "She's yours now," he said. The woman standing in front of us looked nothing like I expected. She was tall, easily 6 feet in heels, draped in a dark coat despite the heat that must have been pushing 90 degrees. Her face was hidden behind oversized sunglasses that reflected my terrified expression back at me. Her lips were painted blood red, a shade so vivid it looked almost black in certain angles. She handed my father an envelope, thick with cash. I could see the green bills pressing against the paper. He didn't even count it. He just shoved it into his pocket with trembling, greedy fingers, turned around, and walked away. He didn't look back. Not once. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run after him. But my legs wouldn't move. The woman's fingers wrapped around my wrist, cold and firm despite the heat. Her touch sent a shiver through my entire body, like ice water in my veins. "Come," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent I couldn't place. And, just like that, my life as I knew it ended. Let me take you back. Before that day. Before the sale. Before everything changed. My name is Alara. I was born into a house that felt more like a prison from the moment I could understand what walls meant. My mother died when I was 4. I don't remember much about her except fragments. Her voice, soft and gentle. The way she'd hum while braiding my hair. The smell of lavender that always clung to her clothes. Everything my father wasn't. After she died, my father changed. Or maybe he was always like that, and she was the only thing keeping the monster chained. He started drinking. Whiskey mostly, the cheap kind that came in plastic bottles. He stopped working. The construction company let him go after he showed up drunk for the 3rd time. And he started blaming me for everything. "You look just like her," he'd spit at me, his breath reeking of alcohol. Ugly. Useless. A curse that killed the only good thing in my life. I wasn't pretty. I knew that from a very young age. My face was too angular, all sharp edges and harsh lines. My eyes were too wide and too pale, an unsettling gray color that made people uncomfortable. My hair was a mousy brown that hung limp and lifeless no matter what I did with it. Kids at school avoided me. Teachers looked past me like I was invisible. I became a ghost in my own life. Except at home. At home, I was hyperizable. Every mistake I made, every breath I took wrong, was a reason for punishment. He made me work like a slave from the time I was 6 years old. I cooked meals on a stove I could barely reach, standing on a chair that wobbled dangerously. I cleaned every inch of that filthy house, scrubbing floors until my knuckles bled and my hands cramped. I hauled water from the well in the backyard because my father refused to pay the water bill. If I was too slow, he'd hit me with whatever was nearby. His belt. A wooden spoon. Once, his fist. If I was too fast, he'd accuse me of being lazy the rest of the time, of having energy I was hiding from him. There was no winning. My only escape was school. But even that became a nightmare. I remember being 8 years old, sitting in class with a black eye I'd tried to cover with my mother's old makeup. It just made it look worse, a smeared purple mess. My teacher, Mrs. Henderson, pulled me aside after class. "Alara, honey, what happened to your eye?" I'd rehearsed the lie my father taught me. I fell down the stairs. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she let it go. They always let it go. By the time I turned 10, I'd stopped trying to hide the bruises. My father remarried when I was 10. Her name was Diane. She was beautiful in that plastic, artificial way. Bleached blonde hair. Too much makeup. Nails so long and sharp they looked like weapons. She was 15 years younger than my father, and I later learned she'd married him thinking he had money. When she discovered he was broke, she could have left. But she didn't. Instead, she decided to take out her disappointment on me. She hated me from the moment she walked through the door. "Why is she still here?" she'd ask my father, wrinkling her nose like I was rotting garbage. "She's old enough to work. Send her to a factory or something. She earns her keep," he'd mutter, not looking up from his bottle. Diane made my life even worse. She'd wake me at 4 in the morning to scrub the toilets with a toothbrush. Not just any toothbrush, my toothbrush. Then she'd throw it back in the bathroom and laugh when I had to use it. She'd throw my food on the floor and make me eat like a dog while they sat at the table. She'd lock me in the basement for days if I dared to speak back, leaving me in the dark with nothing but rats and spiders for company. The basement was the worst. It was cold and damp, with a dirt floor that turned to mud when it rained. There was a single light bulb that didn't work. I'd sit in the darkness, hugging my knees, listening to their laughter from upstairs. Sometimes I'd hear them having parties, people coming over, music playing. Life going on without me. My father never stopped her. He'd just watch, drink in hand, and sometimes he'd laugh too. I learned to make myself small. To disappear into corners. To move silently so they'd forget I was there. But it was never enough. By the time I turned 12, I'd stopped hoping things would get better. I'd accepted that this was my life. A life of pain and servitude until the day I died. I'd started planning my death, actually. I'd picked out a tree in the woods behind our house. I'd stolen rope from the garage. I was just waiting for the right moment. The moment when the pain became too much to bear. Then one morning, everything changed. A woman came to our house on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were when I did the laundry, spending hours scrubbing clothes by hand because our washing machine had broken years ago and never been fixed. I was hanging sheets on the line in the backyard when I heard voices from inside. I crept closer to the window. The woman wore the same dark coat I'd later see on the roadside, the same blood-red lips. But up close, I could see details. Her coat was expensive, probably cashmere. Her shoes were designer, with red soles. She carried herself like someone used to being obeyed. My father's eyes lit up when he saw her. Not with attraction, but with something worse. Greed. They sat in the living room, and I pressed myself against the wall, listening. "I received your message," the woman said. Her voice was cultured, educated. "You said you had something I might be interested in." "Yes, yes." My father's voice was eager, pathetic. "My daughter. She's 12. Young, strong, healthy. She works hard. Never complains. Well-trained." My blood ran cold. He was talking about me like I was livestock. "How much are you asking?" 20,000. The woman laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "For a 12-year-old nobody? I'll give you 10. 15. 10. Final offer. Take it or I walk." There was a long pause. My heart hammered in my chest. 10,000, my father finally agreed. Cash. Of course. Cash leaves no trail. But I'll need to see her first. She's outside. Let me get her. I tried to run. I really did. But Diane appeared behind me, grabbing my arm with those claw-like nails digging into my skin. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed. She dragged me inside and shoved me into the living room. I stumbled and fell to my knees in front of the woman. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her sunglasses were off now, and her eyes were a strange amber color, almost golden. They seemed to look right through me, seeing things I didn't know were there. She circled me slowly, like a predator examining prey. She lifted my chin roughly, turning my face from side to side. She grabbed my hands, examining the calluses and scars from years of labor. She even checked my teeth, pulling my lips back like I was a horse at auction. "She's malnourished," the woman observed. "And these bruises." "She's clumsy," my father said quickly. "Always falling down." The woman's eyes met mine. For just a second, I thought I saw something in them. Pity? Anger? But it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "She'll do," the woman finally said. My father's face broke into a relieved smile. "Excellent. When can we make the exchange? Now. I have the money in my car. Now. Diane appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with suspicion. You're really going to do this? Sell her like a slave. We need the money, my father snapped. And she's just taking up space. Eating food we can't afford. This way, she'll be useful. What if someone finds out? What if she talks? The woman smiled. She won't talk. I guarantee it. There was something in the way she said it that made my stomach drop. Diane's eyes narrowed, calculating. For a moment, I thought she might stop it. Maybe she had a shred of humanity buried under all that cruelty. But then she smiled. Fine. Good riddance. I've been wanting her gone since I moved in. The woman pulled out her phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside. A man in a dark suit got out, carrying a briefcase. He came inside, opened it on the coffee table, and counted out $10,000 in $100 bills. My father's hands shook as he took the money. He counted it 3 times, his eyes gleaming with greed. Pleasure doing business with you, the woman said. She looked at me. Get your things. You have 5 minutes. I stumbled to my room in a daze. My things. What things? I owned almost nothing. A few clothes that were more holes than fabric. A stuffed rabbit my mother had given me before she died. A small rock I'd found in the woods that was smooth and pretty. I shoved them all into a plastic bag. When I came back downstairs, my father was already counting the money again. He didn't look at me. Can I say goodbye? I asked quietly. No time for that, the woman said. She grabbed my wrist. We're leaving. Diane watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. My father finally looked up. For just a second, our eyes met. I waited for something. Regret. Guilt. Anything. But there was nothing. Just cold indifference. Be good, was all he said. That's how I ended up on the roadside. The woman, Maris, I'd learn later, wanted the transaction to look random. If anyone ever investigated, it would just look like she'd picked up a runaway. A random act of charity, not a planned purchase. We stood there for 10 minutes while cars passed. My father took the money, counted it one last time, and stuffed it in his jacket. She's yours now, he said. Then he walked away. I watched him disappear down the road until he was just a dot on the horizon. I waited for him to come back. To change his mind. To say it was all a terrible joke. He never did. Maris's car was a Mercedes, black and sleek, with windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. The driver opened the back door. The interior smelled like leather and expensive perfume. I climbed in, my plastic bag clutched to my chest like a shield. Maris slid in beside me. The driver closed the door, sealing us in. We sat in silence for a few minutes as the car pulled onto the highway. Then Maris spoke. My name is Maris Caldwell. You will call me mistress or ma'am. Do you understand? I nodded, my voice trapped in my throat. Use your words. Why, yes, ma'am. Good. Let me explain your situation. You now belong to me. Completely. Your father signed papers giving me full legal custody. You have no family. No one who cares if you live or die. Your old life is over. Do you understand? Tears burned my eyes. I nodded again. I said, use your words. Yes, ma'am. Better. She leaned back in her seat, crossing her legs. You're probably terrified. That's natural. But let me make one thing clear, I am not your father. I will not beat you for sport. I will not starve you. But I will expect absolute obedience. Can you give me that? Yes, ma'am. We'll see. We drove for hours. I watched the landscape change from urban to suburban to rural. We passed through small towns and endless stretches of farmland. The sun was setting when we finally turned onto a private road. Massive iron gates opened automatically as we approached. The driveway was lined with ancient oak trees that formed a canopy overhead. In the distance, I could see a house. No, not a house. A mansion. A castle made of gray stone, with towers and turrets, surrounded by sprawling gardens. My breath caught in my throat. "Welcome to Ravencrest," Maris said. "Your new home." The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The driver opened the door and Maris stepped out. I followed, my legs shaking. Up close, Ravencrest was even more impressive. The front doors were solid oak, easily 12 feet tall, carved with intricate designs of ravens and roses. The windows were stained glass, depicting scenes I didn't recognize. The whole place felt ancient, like it had stood for centuries. Maris led me inside. The entrance hall took my breath away. The floors were polished marble, black with veins of white. A grand staircase swept upward, splitting into two directions. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, dripping with crystals that caught the light. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of stern-faced people in old-fashioned clothes. "Mrs. Chin," Maris called. A woman appeared from a side door. She was older, maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes. "Ma'am, this is Alara. She'll be staying with us. Please show her to the East Wing. Have Maria draw her a bath and burn those rags she's wearing. Find her something appropriate." Mrs. Chin looked me over with shrewd eyes. "Of course, ma'am. Come along, child." I followed her up the staircase, my hand trailing along the smooth banister. We walked down a long hallway lined with more portraits and ancient-looking tapestries. Finally, Mrs. Chin stopped in front of a door. "This will be your room," she said, opening it. I stepped inside and froze. The room was bigger than my father's entire house. A four-poster bed dominated the center, with dark blue curtains and what looked like a down comforter. There was a wardrobe, a desk, a sitting area with a couch and chairs. Bookshelves lined one wall. A fireplace stood ready for winter. And through another door, I could see a private bathroom. This is mine?" I whispered. "Yes. The bathroom has hot water. A luxury, I'm sure, for someone like you." Mrs. Chen's voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "Maria will bring you clothes. Dinner is at 7. You're expected to be punctual." She left before I could respond. I stood in the middle of the room, unable to process what was happening. Was this real? Or was I dreaming? Had I actually died on that roadside, and this was some bizarre afterlife? A knock on the door made me jump. A young woman entered, carrying an armful of clothes and towels. She looked to be in her early 20s, with dark hair and kind eyes. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Maria. I'm here to help you get cleaned up." She led me to the bathroom, which was bigger than my old bedroom. The tub was enormous, made of white porcelain with gold fixtures. Maria turned on the taps and steam began to rise. "When was the last time you had a proper bath?" she asked. I had to think. I don't know. Years, maybe." Her expression softened. "Well, take your time. Use as much hot water as you want. I'll leave the clothes here. Call if you need anything." She left me alone. I undressed slowly, catching sight of myself in the full-length mirror. I barely recognized the girl looking back at me. I was painfully thin, my ribs visible, my arms like sticks. Bruises covered my body in various stages of healing: purple, yellow, green. Scars from years of abuse crisscrossed my skin. I looked exactly like what I was, a victim. I climbed into the tub. The hot water stung at first, making me gasp. But then the warmth seeped into my bones, relaxing muscles I didn't know were tense. I sank deeper, letting the water cover my shoulders. For the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain or fear, but from overwhelming confusion. What was happening to me? Why had this woman bought me? What did she want? But as I soaked in that perfect, warm water, surrounded by luxury I'd never imagined, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Whatever she wants, it has to be better than what I left behind. I was wrong. It wasn't better. It was different. The first few weeks at Ravencrest were disorienting. I woke up every morning in that massive bed, convinced I'd dreamed everything. But the soft sheets were real. The warm room was real. The meals that appeared 3 times a day were real. Real, but confusing. Maris didn't treat me like a slave. But she didn't treat me like a child either. I was something else. A project. An investment. On my 3rd day, she summoned me to her study. The study was intimidating. Dark wood paneling. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with leather-bound volumes. A desk that looked older than my father. Maris sat behind it, looking every inch the queen of her domain. "Sit," she commanded. I sat in the chair across from her, perched on the edge like I might need to run. "Do you know why I bought you?" she asked. I shook my head. "Because you have potential. Raw, untapped potential that your father was too stupid to recognize. You're going to be educated. Properly. You'll have tutors for every subject. You'll learn languages, history, mathematics, science, art. You'll learn how to move through society with grace and confidence. By the time I'm done with you, no one will ever look at you and see that pathetic creature on the roadside." "Why?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. Maris's eyes narrowed. "Because I can. Because I need someone who owes me everything. Someone who has nothing to go back to. Someone I can mold into exactly what I need." "What do you need?" "That's not your concern. Yet. For now, your only job is to learn. To absorb everything I give you. To become worthy of the investment I've made. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Your first lesson starts tomorrow. Don't disappoint me." The lessons were brutal. Not physically, Maris never hit me, but mentally. My brain felt like it was being squeezed through a wringer every single day. My first tutor was Mr. Ashford, a severe man in his 50s who taught mathematics and science. He spoke in clipped, precise sentences and had no patience for mistakes. Again, he'd say when I got a problem wrong. "And this time, think before you answer." Mrs. Delacroix taught languages. She was French, elegant, and demanding. She insisted I learn French, Latin, and German simultaneously. When I protested that it was too much, she simply said, "Children half your age speak 3 languages fluently. You're behind. Catch up." Professor Hayward taught history and philosophy. He was the kindest of the 3, with gentle eyes and a patient manner. But his lessons were no less demanding. He made me read dense texts about ancient civilizations, medieval politics, and modern warfare. Then he'd quiz me for hours. "Why did the Roman Empire fall, Alara?" Because of invasions?" Too simple. Think deeper. What internal weaknesses made them vulnerable to invasion? My days became a blur of lessons. I studied from sunrise to sunset, with breaks only for meals. My brain ached constantly. I'd fall into bed each night exhausted, my mind spinning with conjugations and equations and historical dates. But slowly, I began to understand. The lessons weren't just about knowledge. They were about power. Maris was teaching me how to think, how to analyze, how to see patterns and connections that others missed. And I was getting good at it. After 6 months, Mr. Ashford actually smiled at me. "You've made remarkable progress," he said. "You're now performing at a university level in mathematics." I'd gone from barely able to do basic arithmetic to solving complex calculus problems. It felt like a miracle. But Maris wasn't satisfied. "Good," she said when I told her. "Now you're ready for the real lessons." That's when the etiquette training began. A woman named Madame Rousseau was brought in. She was ancient, at least 80, with white hair piled on top of her head and a walking stick she used more as a weapon than a support. Posture, she'd bark, rapping my back with the stick. "A lady never slouches." She taught me how to walk. Not just walk, glide. How to enter a room and command attention. How to sit, how to stand, how to move my hands when I spoke. Every gesture had meaning. Every movement was calculated. "You will learn to be graceful even when you're terrified," she told me. "Especially when you're terrified. Grace is power." She taught me table manners. Which fork to use for which course. How to hold a wine glass. How to make conversation without revealing anything important. How to laugh politely at jokes that weren't funny. In society, everything is a performance, she explained. You must learn to perform flawlessly. It was exhausting, but I absorbed it all like a sponge. By my 14th birthday, I barely recognized myself. I could speak 3 languages conversationally and read 2 more. I could discuss philosophy and politics with the depth of someone twice my age. I could walk into a room and make people notice me without saying a word. But I still didn't understand why Maris was doing this. Until the night I discovered the truth. It was past midnight. I'd woken up thirsty and was heading to the kitchen when I heard sounds coming from the east wing. The forbidden wing. The wing I'd been explicitly told never to enter. Chanting. Low and rhythmic, in a language I didn't recognize despite all my lessons. Curiosity overrode caution. I crept down the hallway, following the sound. A door was cracked open, lights spilling out. I peered inside. The room was nothing like the rest of Ravencrest. The walls were bare stone. Candles covered every surface, hundreds of them, casting flickering shadows. Symbols were painted on the floor in something dark and viscous. Blood? I couldn't tell. Maris stood in the center of a circle, her arms raised, her voice rising in that strange language. She wore a black robe that pooled around her feet. Her eyes were closed, her face tilted toward the ceiling. As I watched, the air began to shimmer. The candles flared brighter. The symbols on the floor started to glow with a sickly green light. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, mesmerized by what I was seeing. Maris's eyes snapped open. They were glowing the same green as the symbols. She looked directly at me. "Come here, Alara." Her voice echoed strangely, like multiple people speaking at once. My legs moved without my permission. I walked into the room, crossing the threshold into that circle of candlelight. The symbols on the floor pulsed beneath my feet. Up close, I could feel it. Energy. Power. Something ancient and terrible humming in the air. Maris lowered her arms. Her eyes returned to normal. "I need find your way here eventually," she said. "You're curious. That's good. Curiosity is the beginning of understanding." What are you doing?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Magic. Real magic. Not the parlor tricks and illusions people perform for entertainment. Actual, genuine magic that can reshape reality." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was absurd. Magic isn't real. Maris smiled. With a flick of her wrist, every candle in the room went out. We stood in perfect darkness. Then, with another gesture, they all reignited simultaneously. But this time, the flames were blue. My laugh died in my throat. "Magic is very real," Maris said. "It always has been. But most people are blind to it. They live their entire lives never knowing what's possible." She walked toward me, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. "Do you know why I bought you, Alara? It wasn't just for your potential intelligence or your malleability. It was for this." She grabbed my hand and placed it over one of the glowing symbols. The moment my skin made contact, power surged through me. It felt like lightning and fire and ice all at once. I gasped, trying to pull away, but Maris held me firm. "Do you feel it?" she demanded. "The power inside you? It's been dormant your entire life, suppressed by trauma and abuse. But it's there, waiting." The glow intensified. I could feel something inside me responding, reaching out toward the magic like a flower turning toward the sun. "What is this?" I gasped. "Your birthright." Maris released my hand. The glow faded, but I could still feel the echo of that power thrumming beneath my skin. "You come from a bloodline of magic users, Alara. Ancient and powerful. Your father had no idea what he was throwing away when he sold you." My head spun. "That's impossible." "My mother was just. She was ordinary. Your mother was many things, but ordinary wasn't one of them." Maris's expression softened slightly. "Sit down. It's time you learned the truth." We sat on the stone floor, surrounded by candles and symbols. And Maris told me everything. Your mother's name was Celeste. Celeste Valdres. The Valdres family is one of the oldest magical bloodlines in existence. They can trace their ancestry back over 1,000 years to when magic users ruled openly and kings bowed before them. She pulled out a leather-bound book and opened it to a page showing a family tree. Names and dates sprawled across the yellowed paper. The Valdres family once commanded an empire that stretched across 3 continents. They built cities with magic. They healed plagues. They could manipulate the elements themselves. They were gods among mortals. Her finger traced down the family tree. But power breeds fear. And fear breeds violence. Other nations, other magic users, began to hunt them. Over centuries, the Valdres family was systematically destroyed. Assassination. War. Betrayal. By the time your mother was born, there were fewer than a dozen left. She pointed to a name at the bottom of the tree. Celeste Valdres. Your mother was the last princess of the Valdres line. She inherited unimaginable power and the responsibility to rebuild her family's legacy. Maris's voice turned bitter. But she didn't want it. She wanted to be normal. She wanted love and a quiet life. So she ran. She hid her magic. She changed her name. She married the first man who showed her affection. My father, I whispered. Yes, your pathetic, abusive, worthless father. She thought she could have a normal life with him. She thought love would be enough. What happened to her? Maris was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with barely contained emotion. She was my sister. The world tilted. I stared at her, unable to process the words. You're my aunt? Yes. I begged Celeste not to marry that man. I could see what he was. Weak. Greedy. The kind of man who breaks under pressure. But she wouldn't listen. She was determined to have her fairy tale. Maris's hands clenched into fists. When you were born, I could feel your power. Even as a baby, you radiated magic. I told Celeste to leave him, to bring you to me so I could train you properly. But she refused. She said she could give you a normal childhood. Then she died, I said quietly. Yes, your father told everyone it was an illness. But I know better. He killed her. Maybe not with his hands, but with his neglect and his cruelty. He broke her spirit until there was nothing left. And when she died, he turned that same cruelty on you. Tears streamed down my face. For my mother. For the life she'd tried to build. For everything that had been stolen from both of us. I watched you for years, Maris continued. I saw what he did to you. I wanted to intervene, but legally I had no rights. He was your father. The courts would have given you back to him. So I waited. And when I heard he was desperate enough, cruel enough, to consider selling you, I made sure I was the one who bought you. She grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. I saved you, Alara. Not just from him, but for your destiny. You are the last of the Valdres bloodline. You carry magic in your veins that most people can't even imagine. And I'm going to teach you how to use it. Training began the next night. Maris taught me the basics first. How to feel the energy around me. How to draw it in and channel it through my body. How to visualize what I wanted and force reality to comply. It was harder than any of my academic lessons. Magic wasn't just knowledge, it was instinct, emotion, and will combined. Magic responds to feeling, Maris explained. You can't logic your way through a spell. You have to want it. You have to need it. You have to demand it with every fiber of your being. At first, I failed. Over and over. I couldn't make the candles flicker. I couldn't move a feather with my mind. I couldn't summon even a spark. Frustration built inside me like pressure in a bottle. I can't do this, I said after weeks of failure. Maybe there's no magic in me. Maybe you're wrong. Maris's eyes flashed with anger. I am not wrong. The problem is you. You've spent your entire life suppressing your emotions. Hiding what you feel so your father wouldn't have another excuse to hurt you. But you can't do that anymore. If you want power, you have to embrace your feelings. All of them. Even the ugly ones. I don't know how. Then learn. Think about your father. Think about what he did to you. To your mother. Think about every moment of pain and humiliation and fear. And let yourself feel it. I closed my eyes. I thought about the beatings. The hunger. The basement. The way my father had looked at me on that roadside. The way he'd walked away without a second glance. Rage built inside me. Hot and terrible. Years of suppressed anger rising like a tidal wave. I opened my eyes. Every candle in the room exploded into towering flames. The windows shattered outward, glass raining into the garden. The air crackled with energy so intense it made my hair stand on end. Power poured out of me in waves, wild and uncontrolled. Objects started flying. Books lifted off shelves. Furniture slid across the floor. The very walls seemed to shake. Maris's face broke into a triumphant smile. There it is, she shouted over the chaos. There's the power I knew you had. It took me 10 minutes to calm down enough to stop. When the magic finally subsided, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath. I'd never felt so exhausted and so alive at the same time. Maris knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder. That was just the beginning, she said. Now the real work starts. Years passed in a blur of training. Magic. Combat. Strategy. Politics. Maris was preparing me for something, though she never quite said what. I learned to summon fire with a thought. To move objects without touching them. To read people's emotions by feeling their energy. To create illusions so convincing they could fool anyone. I learned to fight. Hand-to-hand combat with instructors who didn't hold back. Weapons training with swords, knives, and firearms. Maris made sure I could defend myself against any threat. Power makes you a target, she told me. You need to be able to protect yourself. On my 16th birthday, Maris gave me a gift. The leather-bound book of my family history. This is yours now, she said. Every Valdris who came before you. Their achievements. Their failures. Their magic. Study it. Learn from them. I spent months poring over that book. Reading about ancestors who'd built cities and toppled kingdoms. Who'd healed the sick and commanded the weather. Who'd been worshipped as gods and hunted as monsters. And slowly, I began to understand who I was meant to be. On a cold evening in late autumn, Maris summoned me to her study. She looked different. Older. Tired. Sit, she said. I sat, worry gnawing at my stomach. You've been with me for 4 years now, Maris began. In that time, you've exceeded every expectation I had. You're intelligent, powerful, and disciplined. You've become everything I hoped you would be. Thank you, mistress. Don't thank me yet, because now comes the hard part. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Open it. Inside were legal documents. Deeds. Property records. Financial statements. The Valdris family once owned vast lands, Maris explained. Over the centuries, they were stolen, seized, or sold under duress. But the claims never fully expired. They're buried under layers of bureaucracy and false ownership, but they're still valid. She pointed to a map. These are the ancestral Valdris lands. Across Europe, Asia, and North America. Collectively worth billions of dollars. And legally, they belong to you. My breath caught. What? I've been working with lawyers for years, building the case. It's time to reclaim what's yours. Not just the land, but the legacy. The power. The name. She leaned forward, her amber eyes intense. I'm going to help you become what your mother refused to be. A queen in everything but name. Someone with the wealth and influence to reshape the world. Why? I asked. Why do you want this for me? Because you're my family. The only family I have left. And because the world needs more people like us. People with power who aren't afraid to use it. She stood up and walked to the window. There's one more thing. Your father. My stomach clenched at the mention of him. He's done well for himself, Maris said, her voice dripping with disgust. The money from selling you? He invested it, started a business, married into a wealthy family. He's now a respected member of society. Charitable donations, community awards, the perfect success story. He doesn't deserve any of that. No, he doesn't. Which is why we're going to destroy him. It took 3 more years to put everything in place. 3 years of legal battles, of tracing ownership through centuries of records, of bribing officials and threatening lawyers, of using magic to uncover hidden documents and expose lies. But slowly, piece by piece, we did it. The Voldris lands were restored to my name. Assets worth over $3 billion. Properties spanning 5 continents. A fortune that made me one of the wealthiest people in the world. And with that wealth came power. Real, tangible power. I used it to build a network. I invested in companies, manipulated markets, bought influence with politicians and judges. I became a player in a game most people didn't even know existed. I also used it to investigate my father. What I found made my blood boil. He hadn't just invested the money from selling me. He'd used it as seed capital for a business that exploited vulnerable people. Payday loans with predatory interest rates. Rent-to-own schemes that trapped poor families in debt. A real estate empire built on buying homes from desperate sellers for pennies on the dollar and then flipping them for massive profits. He'd built his fortune on the suffering of people like the person I used to be. And society loved him for it. They called him a self-made man, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist. It made me sick. Are you ready? Maris asked. We stood in her study, now my study too. We were partners in this. Co-conspirators. More than ready, I said. She smiled and handed me an invitation printed on cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. The Benefactors Gala. Every wealthy, powerful person in the region will be there, including your father and his wife. Perfect. Remember, this isn't just about revenge. This is about sending a message. About showing the world who you really are. I know. I took the invitation and studied it. The gala was in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for the performance of a lifetime. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. Stars glittered in the sky like diamonds. I stood in front of the mirror in my room, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. I'd changed so much since that day on the roadside. I was 19 now, but I looked older. Sophisticated. My face had lost its awkward angles and become striking instead. High cheekbones. A strong jaw. Those strange gray eyes that had once made people uncomfortable now drew them in. I wore a gown that cost more than my father's original house. Deep emerald green silk that flowed like water. A neckline that was daring but elegant. Diamonds at my throat and ears, real diamonds, worth a fortune. My hair, once dull and lifeless, had been styled into an elaborate updo. My makeup was flawless. I looked like royalty. Because I was. Maria appeared behind me, adjusting the gown one last time. You look beautiful, Miss Alara, she said softly. Over the years, Maria had become more than just a servant. She was the closest thing I had to a friend. Thank you, Maria. Are you nervous? Terrified, I admitted. You'll be magnificent. You always are. Maris appeared in the doorway, resplendent in midnight blue. She looked me over with approval. Ready? Yes. We arrived at the gala in a limousine. Cameras flashed as we stepped onto the red carpet. I'd been preparing for this moment for years, but the reality still took my breath away. The venue was the Grand Ashford Hotel, the most expensive in the city. The ballroom was decorated in white and gold, with massive flower arrangements and tables laden with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Hundreds of people mingled, laughing, networking, playing their games of power and influence. And there, near the bar, was my father. I'd seen recent photos, but seeing him in person was different. He'd aged. His hair was fully gray now, combed to hide the thinning spots. His face was ruddier from too much alcohol, though he'd lost some weight. He wore an expensive tuxedo that hung well on his frame. He looked comfortable, confident, happy. Diane stood beside him, still beautiful in that plastic way, though the years and cosmetic surgery had given her face a frozen quality. She wore a dress that was too tight and too revealing for someone her age. Covered in so many diamonds, she looked like a jewelry store exploded on her. They were laughing with a group of executives, champagne glasses in hand. I felt my magic surge, hot and angry beneath my skin. I wanted to strike him down right there. To make him suffer. Maris placed a calming hand on my arm. "Not yet," she whispered. "Patience." We circulated through the crowd. Maris had arranged everything perfectly. She introduced me to everyone who mattered. "This is Alara Valdris, the last heir of the Valdris dynasty." People's eyes would widen with recognition. The Valdris name was legend in certain circles. They'd heard stories, myths. And here I was, proof that the bloodline hadn't died. I heard the Valdris family had disappeared. "We've been in hiding," I'd say with a mysterious smile. "But we're back now." Within an hour, I was the center of attention. Everyone wanted to meet me, to talk to me, to get close to the new power player in town. I could feel my father's eyes on me from across the room. He was curious. Everyone was talking about me, but he didn't recognize me. Why would he? The last time he'd seen me, I was 12 years old, ugly, broken. The girl in front of him now was a completely different person. Finally, I decided it was time. I walked directly toward him, my head high, my steps measured. Conversations died as I passed. People sensed something was about to happen. I stopped right in front of him. Up close, I could see the broken capillaries on his nose, the yellow tinge to his eyes from years of drinking, the way his hands shook slightly even though he was trying to hide it. He looked at me, confused, but trying to smile, trying to be charming. "Hello," he said. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Raymond Thorne." I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Hello, father." His champagne glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the marble floor and shattered, sending glass and alcohol everywhere. His face went from confused to pale to purple in seconds. "Ilara." His voice cracked. The conversations around us stopped completely. Everyone was watching now. "Surprised to see me?" I asked. Diane's face twisted with shock and something else. Fear. "This is impossible," she gasped. "You're supposed to be, you should be, dead." I finished. "Gone? Lost forever in whatever hell you sold me to." My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. He couldn't form words. I let the silence stretch, let him squirm. Then I spoke, loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Let me tell everyone a story. A story about a man who sold his 12-year-old daughter for $10,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. "That's a lie," my father sputtered, his face now bright red. I would never." "Oh, but you did." I pulled out my phone and gestured to the large screen on the wall that had been displaying a slideshow of charity work. Maris had hacked the system earlier. With a tap, the screen changed. Security footage appeared. Grainy, but clear enough. The roadside. My father handing me over to Maris. The envelope of cash. Him walking away without looking back. The footage had a date and timestamp. Undeniable proof. The ballroom erupted in horrified whispers. My father stumbled backward, his hand grasping at the table behind him for support. "You sold your own child," someone said, disgust dripping from every word. She wasn't." My father couldn't finish the sentence. What could he say? There was no defense. "Here's the even better part," I continued, my voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "That ugly, worthless daughter you threw away like garbage? She's the rightful heir to the Valdris dynasty. A bloodline that dates back over 1,000 years. A family that once ruled empires." I gestured to Maris, who stepped forward. "The woman who bought me? She's my aunt. She saved me. She educated me. She trained me. And together, we've spent the last 7 years reclaiming everything that was stolen from my family." Maris pulled out a document and held it up. As of last week, Elara Valdris is the legal owner of properties worth over $3 billion. She's one of the wealthiest landowners in the world. The crowd erupted again. Shock. Disbelief. My father's legs gave out. He collapsed his knees, right there on the ballroom floor, surrounded by the shattered remains of his champagne glass. "No," he whispered. "This can't be happening." I knelt down, bringing my face level with his, close enough that only he could hear my next words. "You threw me away because you thought I was worthless. But you threw away a princess. An heiress. Someone with more power than you could ever imagine. And now I'm going to take everything from you the way you tried to take everything from me." I stood up and addressed the crowd again. "I want everyone here to know what kind of man Raymond Thorne really is. He built his entire fortune on the money he got from selling his daughter. Every property he owns, every business he runs, every dollar in his bank account, it all started with child trafficking." I pulled out another set of documents and handed them to a lawyer I'd planted in the crowd. "These are legal documents proving the source of his initial capital. The $10,000 that started his empire. I'm filing a lawsuit to seize every asset he's acquired using that money. Every property. Every stock. Every account. All of it." The lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Chin, scanned the documents. "This is all legitimate and admissible," she confirmed loudly. "Ms. Valdris has an extremely strong case. Given the nature of the initial crime, the courts will almost certainly rule in her favor." Diane started screaming. "This is insane. You can't do this. We've worked for years. That money is ours." "That money came from selling a child," I said coldly. "Which makes every transaction afterward fruit of the poisonous tree. Legally and morally tainted." I turned to my father, who was still on his knees, tears now streaming down his face. "You made one mistake, Father. You thought you could throw me away and move on. You thought I was nothing. But I was never nothing. And now you're going to pay for that mistake for the rest of your life." Security guards appeared again, arranged by Maris beforehand. "Please escort Mr. Thorne and Mrs. Thorne from the premises," I said. My father tried to grab my dress as the guards pulled him to his feet. "Elara, please," he begged. "I'm your father. I'm sorry." I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. "Please, you have to forgive me." I looked down at his hand on my dress. The same hand that had hit me countless times. The same hand that had pushed me into the basement. The same hand that had taken money in exchange for me. I pulled my dress free. "You're not my father. You're just a man who made a transaction. And now you're going to live with the consequences." The guards dragged him toward the exit. He was screaming now, begging, making a complete scene. Diane was shrieking about lawyers and lawsuits. The crowd parted to let them through, disgust and fascination on every face. As they disappeared through the doors, the ballroom remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. It was Patricia Chin, the lawyer. Then another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was applauding. People approached me, wanting to shake my hand, to congratulate me, to align themselves with me. I'd won. Completely and absolutely. Maris appeared beside me, pride shining in her eyes. "Well done," she whispered. I looked around at the crowd, at the people who now saw me as someone powerful, someone to be respected and feared. This was my world now. And I'd earned every bit of it.